today's topic of discussion is polygamy for modern day women. So right now in today's society, we are experiencing a marriage crisis, meaning that we've got a bunch of people getting into boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. They're not getting married, they're fornicating with one another, and women aren't being given their rights. So we're going to be discussing some key points in terms of why a polygamous relationship is needed in today's society and why it's so important to actually be used in modern day times. So first point is hypergamy. Now, in the world, right, there's more women in the world than men. So let's say hypothetically all the men were to get married to women. There would be still women left over. So what would happen to them? They would either have to marry the other men, so share the men, or, in the words of Dr. Zakir Naik, become public property. Now, if you don't know what that is, you can go research that. Now, with women, right, women marry up. So they're not looking for somebody who's equal. They're not looking for somebody who's below them. They're looking for somebody who is better than them, who provides more value to their life and who provides more value to the relationship than that woman. Now, there's a bunch of women in modern day times who are just so selfish, they don't want to share their husband. Now, if they were to get a man and then lock him down in a relationship, and then if she was to have a best friend, or if she had somebody who she knows, she would be so selfish that she wouldn't want her husband to share that relationship with. You know, this is the sad reality of modern day women, is that they just want to take for themselves and then disregard the rest of the people. So if you look at, for example, the amount of men who commit suicide and the amount of men who are in incarceration in the prisons and so on, you're looking at less and less men in relationships. So what are these women gonna do? Can't go around fornicating all day, because that's what it is with modern day women. These women here are literally fornicating with these supposedly high value men. They're not being given their Islamic rights. They're not being given their rights by God. Now, when you get into a polygamous marriage, you are given your rights as a woman. Some sort of hair stuck in my flipping lip. So these women here are literally going to get treated with respect, dignity, class, integrity, rather than being seen as somebody who's a side piece or a ting. You know, that's what these women nowadays, they want to just be labelled as and classed as. Now, what sort of life is that? You haven't even got no husband. You're literally sleeping around with all these different guys. And you're not somebody who's keeping themselves pure. Now, men and women, they value different things. You know, men value virginity and purity. Now, this may offend some women. Some of these women, they may be watching this and they're thinking, oh, what does this guy mean by purity? What I mean by that is when a woman hasn't had previous relationships, she's somebody who's a virgin, that person there is going to have higher marriage market value. But if a woman has had multiple partners before, and she comes along and she wants a man of value, it's going to be difficult for her to try and attain that guy. Now that's what it is. Hypergamy can only be satisfied by getting a man of value. Now if you look at the stats, right, around 80% of women are gravitating towards 20% of guys. So even if, let's say, all the men were to get married, a lot of those women wouldn't be satisfied. So they would be gravitating towards only 20% of those guys. And that's why if you look at the best example, Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, if you look at him, look at the Sahaba, the companions, and then if you look at all the other religious scriptures, so like the Bible for example, King Solomon, and all these other prophets and leaders in society, they all had multiple wives. Now some people come along now and they try and sexualize everything. They try and say, oh, look at these guys, they're just trying to fulfill their own desires. They're just trying to sleep with these women. No. Fulfilling desires is one aspect of marriage. But there's a lot more to it. When a woman gets married, she gets her Islamic rights. So he has to be a provider, he has to be a protector of her. You can't just go around, start abusing her and start disrespecting her and doing all types of craziness. So this is what it is. This is a modern day solution which many people are lacking. So that leads us to the next point when it comes to halal. So halal means permissible. So when this is a permissible act given by God, it allows a woman to utilize that. She's not getting into haram relationships. So she's not getting into boyfriend-girlfriend type relationships, and she's not consuming this X-rated content, for example. That's what's happening right now with a bunch of these women who are single and childless. A bunch of these women who are single and childless, these people here are going around just lowering their value, damaging their value. For what? Pride and ego. Pride and ego has destroyed modern day women. They see it as polygamy. They see polygamy as second class or lower class or not good enough. It's complete BS. A woman who's married, she's somebody who's got a good man of value. She's going to be developing her connection with God. She's going to have a stronger connection with God. Now, there's verses in the Quran which talk about this. There's also hadiths which back this up as well, where a woman who gets married and she's obedient towards her husband, she will be able to enter from any of the gates of paradise. So the 7 gates, she's going to be able to enter from any one of them. That right there is going to be more important, rather than trying to stay single, sleeping around, committing zina, and then when they die upon that, hellfire. So next point is family. Now there's certain women who have been divorced. There's some women who have already got children, and so on. Now some women may have kids that have moved out, they've gotten older, and she doesn't want a full-time relationship. Well, a polygamous relationship is good for her, because she doesn't need to sleep around with all these different guys. She can literally just get married to a man of value, and then that way there, she's able to fulfill her desires. Some men may be watching this and they're thinking, oh, do women have desires? Women have desires just as much as how men have desires. This is why God has given women a polygamous choice. Let me rephrase that. Where a woman can marry a man and then share him. A woman can't have multiple partners and boyfriends. It's not permissible. Now somebody's feminist, they may come along and say, oh, why isn't it permissible for a woman to have multiple boyfriends and multiple partners? Well, these people here ain't got no brain cells. So if this woman here was to sleep around with all these different guys, she wouldn't know who the dad is if she was to get pregnant. It's not within a woman's nature to be polygamous. It's within men's nature to be polygamous and to have multiple partners. That's why a man can literally impregnate multiple women, but a woman can only get pregnant one time. So she has to have the whole 9 months, and then after that give birth, and then after that she would have to get with the guy again. So this is why it's so important in today's time for women to actually start looking at the bigger picture, because more and more women are heading towards being single for the rest of their life. So final point is flexible. So there's certain women out there who are career orientated. They want to work long hours. They ain't got time for a full-time relationship. They're not interested in, let's say, kids, or they may not be able to even have kids, like 35 years old, 40 years old, and so on. But they want a relationship. Now, these women here are not going to go with the bum loser type guys because of what? Hypergamy. So they're going to need to get a man of value. Now, the issue is a lot of these beta males, some of them have got money, but they don't even want to take on the responsibility of a second wife. It's because these guys here, they're not in tune with their nature. Now, as I mentioned previously, within men's nature is to be polygamous. So with these guys, right, they're watching, let's say, X-rated content, and then they're just going through all these different videos. They try and get a dopamine hit. They're looking at all these different women. And those women there aren't satisfying him. Because that guy's looking for variety. Whereas a woman just wants one man. So, just to wrap up, hypergamy. Women's nature is to be hypergamous. They aren't going around sleeping with a bunch of different guys. It's not within their nature. Now, unfortunately, in today's society, a bunch of these women are being programmed to sleep around with a bunch of different guys, and to text multiple men and keep your options open and so on. But that's not within women's nature. Women's nature is to literally get a man of value and marry him. Next point after that was halal. So this right here is a halal solution, a permissible solution for modern day women. It's needed now more than any other time period. Reason being is because we got a bunch of women who are single and childless. And then next point after that was family. Some women have been divorced. Some women have already got kids. They don't want any more kids, but they want to fulfill their desires. So with that right, they should get married and share that man. So then that way there, she's not getting used and abused by these dirty scumbags. These supposedly high value men. They're not high value. They're literally just treating these women as side pieces. And then the final point was flexible. This gives women the option to be flexible. She's not going to be getting pinned down to a full-time relationship. But these women here need to drop their ego and pride and realize that there's several benefits of a polygamous relationship. Polygamy in and of itself is really beautiful. You're not doing anything wrong. Because that's what it is with society. Society is going to deem it as, oh, this person here is no good. This man here is bad for having multiple wives. But this guy here is literally providing and protecting for them. He's giving them their Islamic rights. The rights which God has given to them. And then obviously he has to treat them fairly and equally. But not equal in the sense of equity. So there's a difference between equal and equity. Now, all relationships from the deen perspective get treated based off of equity. So with equity, sometimes the first wife may get more time than the second wife. And then sometimes the second wife may get more time than the first one. And then he's trying to treat them fairly. And then with that right, we always look at the best example, which is Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. How he had 9 wives. Some people can't even handle 1. Imagine having 9. So every time you take on the responsibility of a second, third and fourth wife, so you can have up to 4 wives, it becomes more and more difficult to maintain those relationships. But it's recommended by God. So there's a verse in the Quran which talks about it. It says, marry 2, 3 or 4, but if you cannot do justice, then marry only 1. So for the men who are watching this, the men who are of value, if you're, for example, already married right now, you may want to consider polygamy. Because it doesn't just help you as a man when it comes to increasing your good deeds. You're also helping another woman, helping her from not commit haram. Having a boyfriend, getting used and abused and so on. You're giving her her Islamic rights. And that right there is much needed now more than any other time period. So I hope that makes sense, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.